Welcome to Folder 404. This isn't just a channel, it's a gateway. Every night we open a new folder, one that was never meant to be found. A case lost in time, buried in silence, sealed behind digital dust. No names, no dates, only fragments, shadows, echoes of something that once was. Each story, an unopened file from the archives of the strange, the unexplained, the horrifying. And once it's opened, it can't be closed. So, if you're here, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and leave the world you know behind. Because tonight, a new file unfolds. This is folder 404, and this is your next descent. Let's begin. Enjoy the journey. Rot Gospel, a folk horror story. The mill was the last thing to close in Fetter's Hollow. Once it shut down, folks either left or wilted. Those who remained turned into rust themselves, browned around the edges, their lives flaking in the wind. The church, St. Elia's, had rotted with the town, and now, after 17 years in the wilderness, Asa Greaves had come home with a black suitcase and a head full of failure. He didn't know about the tent yet. Asa had tried to keep the fire alive elsewhere, 2 congregations in Kentucky, 1 in West Virginia, but his voice never filled a room the way it used to in seminary. Maybe it was the doubt. Maybe it was God's silence. He'd grown too used to speaking into empty pews. When the letter came, his uncle dead, the church left in his name, he saw it as a second chance. No one else would call it that. The building was half collapsed. The foundation bowed inward like something had tried to pull it underground. Still, Asa arrived on a Tuesday morning, boots crunching over broken hymnals scattered in the yard like leaves. He didn't notice the hole in the floor until dusk. It was under the pulpit, circular, just wide enough to fit a man's shoulders, covered in what looked like old copper piping, but colder, breathing cold. He stared into it for a long time before something whispered, "Welcome." He snapped back like a snakebite had struck him. The first sermon came to him in a dream, a voice like syrup over gravel, thick and low. It said things Asa didn't understand, strung phrases together in a cadence that felt true, even if the meaning blurred. He wrote it down, half asleep. When he read it aloud Sunday morning, standing over the plugged hole, his own voice took on weight. People showed up. No flyers, no social media, just folks wandering in from nowhere, like they'd been called. Asa remembered Lizzie, who had limped for 10 years after the fire at her father's house. She walked out after that first sermon without her cane. Someone called it a miracle. He let them believe it. The tent appeared the following week, red-striped, gnarled at the poles like it had grown from the earth itself. It sat precisely where the mill once stood. No one saw it being raised, but folks filled it nightly. Asa never stepped inside. He just knew. He stayed in the church, letting the voice speak through him. The crowd grew, every pew full, people standing in the aisles, chanting phrases Asa didn't recognize but knew by heart. Thine root is iron, thine flesh is bread, we eat, we kneel, we hunger fed. On the 4th Sunday, the ceiling bled. It dripped slow from the rafters, dark, viscous, sweet-smelling. Asa looked up mid-sermon and saw it pooling above the cross. No one panicked. They stood. They sang. The old woman in the front pew, who hadn't spoken since her stroke, rose and belted out the hymn with fire in her throat. Later that night, he went to the hole again. This time, he pressed his ear against the boards. More. The voice throbbed like a second heartbeat. They will offer, you must receive. That week, the sick came from other counties. The healed returned to worship, their voices low and tangled in root-like chants. Asa's dreams were no longer just sermons. They were memories of something buried under Fetter's hollow, something old and famished. He saw roots under the town, veins, teeth, altar bones. Asa met Lenny, his old friend from high school, outside the gas station. Lenny never left town, worked odd jobs, kept to himself, but even Lenny had started coming to the church. You remember what this place was before the mill? Lenny asked. Asa shrugged. Not much. There was a place here before the town, a circle of stones. My gran called it the Red Grove, said they fed something here, said the mill paved it over to bury the hunger. Pause. Lenny's eyes flicked toward the tent. Maybe it ain't dead. Maybe you're digging it up. He tried to stop. No more sermons, no more listening to the whole. He stayed out of the church 3 whole days. On the 4th, he woke up in the middle of the aisle, throat raw, blood on the altar, pews packed with blank-eyed worshippers chanting a language older than bone. The whole pulsed like a wound. No more hunger, he tried to say aloud, but the congregation screamed with joy, their mouths stretching too wide, their eyes turned to red glass. The tent burst open one night. Those inside walked out, changed. Not grotesque, nothing so obvious, but longer, heavier, like they'd been filled with something dense and meat-slick. Children stopped crying, animals wouldn't enter the town line, and still Asa preached. Still they came. He finally dug beneath the pulpit. He broke the boards, clawed through soil, deeper than any foundation should go. Down there he found the old church, the one before the first settlers came. Its altar was made of teeth, its pews grown from brambled wood. Beneath it, a root system thick with bone and rusted nails. The voice was not in the hole, it was the hole. Asa returned to the surface a day later, mud-caked, eyes gone white. He preached until his throat tore. The people screamed and cheered and dropped to their knees as the ground beneath the church breathed, and somewhere outside, the tent unfolded, it grew. Now, Fetter's Hollow is on no map. There is no road that leads back to it. But some nights, if you're driving through the back roads of the Rust Belt, you'll see a faint red glow on the horizon and hear chanting carried on the wind like a hymn. If you stop, it's already too late. If you enter the tent, you'll understand the gospel, and it will never stop eating. You heard it, didn't you? That voice under the story, the part that wasn't supposed to bleed through. It's not over. There's another case waiting, another folder they tried to erase, but it's still here, still alive. If you're brave, if the shadows haven't started whispering your name yet, go on, open the next one. We'll be waiting inside. Folder 404 never ends. Room E13. The carpet was worn thin near the elevator, a brown paisley print stained with the dust of decades and bleach that never fully did its job. The buzz of fluorescence overhead sounded tired, like the whole building had been holding its breath since the 90s and never quite exhaled. He checked in at 3:42 a.m. The graveyard clerk didn't ask for ID, just slid a brass keycard across the counter. Room E13, she mumbled without looking up. He blinked. Didn't I have E13 last time? No answer. just the soft hum of a printer in the back room that hadn't stopped since he walked in. He made his way down the long hallway, dimly lit, lined with doors painted the same sickly beige. The air smelled of recycled air freshener and something older. The room was cold, not air-conditioned cold, memory cold, like someone else's dream had seeped into the dry wall and never left. A cheap bed with a floral spread, a single chair, curtains that didn't quite close, TV bolted to the wall. He dropped his duffel bag on the floor, sat on the edge of the bed, paused. He wasn't tired anymore. The first night he thought it was a dream. Something was watching him from the foot of the bed, a shadow, unmoving, featureless, just there. He turned on the light, gone, back to sleep, or something like it. The second night, same room. He'd asked to switch. The receptionist, a different one this time, older, pale, and squinting at a guest book, just smiled. Sure thing. Let me check what's open. She reached for the keys, pulled one down at random. E13, lucky you. He laughed nervously. She didn't. That night it was closer, the shadow, not at the foot of the bed, but beside it, face inches from his. He didn't scream, couldn't, just woke up with dry tears on his cheek and blood on the pillow from a bitten tongue. The third night he left, walked out the door, took the stairs, past the vending machine with the out-of-order sticker faded to white, out the lobby, into his rental, onto the road. He drove for hours, no GPS, just road signs and cheap gas station coffee. The sun rose, and somehow he was back. Checking in again, key card sliding across the counter, room E13. The bell above the entrance never made a sound. On the fourth night, he didn't sleep. He set up his old camcorder, one he used for work trips in the late 90s, pointed it at the bed, sat in the chair, tried not to blink. Around 3:17 a.m. the TV flickered on, static, then grainy footage, the room, this room, from the ceiling corner. He saw himself sitting in the chair, saw something rise behind him, long, thin, moving like it wasn't sure how human joints worked. It leaned in, he spun around, nothing there, except the tape was still rolling. It still showed the figure, standing behind him, reaching. The fifth night he tried to ask questions. He spoke into the static, into the mirror, into the walls. No answers, just voices in the ductwork. Crying, panicked prayers, a flight number repeated over and over, whispers about maintenance, engine failure, someone missing from the manifest. The voices weren't from the past, they were from something that hadn't happened yet. He found the front desk empty the next morning. He checked the CCTV. The timestamp read, March 14, 2001, 4:06 a.m., but outside it was still 1997. He watched himself walk into the hotel on the monitor, and then watched the recording loop. He never left. The clerk was always different. The smile always fake. The key always the same. On the sixth night, he pried the drywall open behind the bed, found photographs, scorched at the edges, people sitting in the room, different decades, same haunted eyes, every face blurred except one, his, younger, smiling, standing in front of a Boeing 727 on the tarmac, date scribbled on the back, Flight 187, March 15th, 2001. That flight would never land. It would vanish from radar, mid-air fire, unknown cause. The wreckage wouldn't be found until years later, and somehow he was there before it happened. He wasn't being haunted. He was the haunting, a fixed loop in the hotel's memory, a ghost trapped in a story that hadn't finished writing itself. final night. He tried to burn the room, doused the mattress, lit a match, flame flared, then blinked out. The lights buzzed, the air smelled of ozone. A new receptionist waited at the desk. "Room E13, she said, voice calm as a weather report. The last shot, he sits in the chair, eyes wide, mouth slack. Camcorder recording, on screen, room E13, time 3:17 a.m. No movement. A shadow forms beside him. The tape loops. You heard what wasn't meant to be heard. You opened a file that should have stayed locked. Some memories corrupt more than just minds. Some stay. Take a breath, rest your thoughts, but don't trust the silence. Next folder opens tomorrow, folder 404.